Hey friends, how are you? Thanks so much for tuning in. This week, we're going to talk about how, when, and where you're most creative. And maybe you've never thought about this before. How, when, and where you're most creative. How, meaning what is the process that drives your creativity? When, meaning there are times of day that you are likely more creative than the others. And where, and I'm going to focus on this a lot. Where are you most creative? And let me just give you a hint up front that often it's not at your desk at work. And just for me personally, I'm a morning person, but for whatever reason, I'm more creative at night when I'm relaxed and at home. And I think you have to apply this to yourself. How, when, and where are you most creative? How being, what do you need around you? Do you like to be creative with a team? What are those things that drive your creativity through a process? It could be through an application. Identify those things and know how to utilize them. Don't let them be your creativity. Let them enhance your creativity. When is simply what it sounds like. When in the day are you most creative? And I would encourage you to put your most creative work off. And if you're in the morning that wouldn't be putting it off, I'd be doing it first. But if you're creative, maybe after lunch or later in the day, or when you go home. Often I hear people say, oh, well, I was thinking about it on my drive home. Or when I was laying in bed, this came to me. And you need to identify why that is. It's not just when, that applies to where. That often people will think about things, maybe even in the shower. That's not true for me, but I've heard a lot of people say, I thought about this in the shower and this is what I think we should do going forward. Identify those things. Let those things drive your creativity, drive when you create and how you create, and really dip deep into those. You're not going to be creative all the time. You're not going to be creative in all spaces. For me, space is extremely important. There are spaces that I simply know I'm not going to be most creative. Earlier this week, I was tasked by a client to write something, and I was in a non-creative space, and I was trying to do it somewhat late at night, which was not a great plan by me, and I simply stopped. I stopped because it wasn't the best time, and I stopped because it wasn't the best space. And thereby, those two things resulted in, it took me too long. So the end product was actually good and the client was happy, but the time and space just weren't the best for me. And so you have to know when to put things down and pick them up the next morning in a space, in a team environment, whatever that may be for you that really drives your creativity. So I hope that these three things will trigger something in your brain. If you've never thought about these things before, I encourage you to actually sit down and maybe even write them out. They're extremely impactful things to identify and will make your creative process actually easier so that you know when you're most creative, where, and how, what you need to do with your creativity to get it going. So hopefully, again, those make sense. But I appreciate you tuning in. Sorry I missed last week. If you didn't catch that I missed last week, well, good for you. And we'll see you again next week. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.